that thing? Ready to go. Ready to go. All right. Welcome to our meeting, everyone. We'll start with the prayer and the pledge. Let's pray. Lord, we thank you for this day. We thank you for the community we live in. We ask that you would continue to bless this community. Bless our leadership, bless leadership, and grant your wisdom to the leadership of our utility commission, to our management team, to the city, local, state, and national leaders. We ask that you would provide your wisdom and guidance to all those folks. We ask you to bless our community. We thank you that we, as we've come through this water crisis with our employees, all made it through safe and did a great job, and we thank you for that. We ask that you would bless this food that we've partaken of. Bless it for the nourishment of our bodies. Bless those that prepared it. And bless us for your service. We ask these things in your most holy and precious name. Amen. Amen. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
If you will indulge me a little bit, it's not on the agenda, but I'd like to take a quick run through and give you some, just so you can mostly see some pictures, and talk a little bit about the water main break we had last week. And try to go through it fairly quickly, but I thought it would be good to give you guys an update. And first off the bat, we had a lot of folks that did a lot of great work on this. We never want to have this situation, but our folks responded incredibly well. And we do have representatives representing the folks that were out there doing the work sitting behind you. We've got Frankie Gillum, who is water distribution crew leader, one of our 3 crew leaders. Frankie is he is all over the place out there, so he does a great job. They all do. But I'm going to talk a little bit about an idea that Frankie had that I think is really a forward-looking thing, and he just does a great job. Beside him is Jody Geddes. He's the water distribution supervisor. The crews work for him. One thing you'll notice during these crises, Jody never gets ruffled, which is a good thing. But he never stops moving either. And he's got guys down the hole. He's got guys out chasing leaks out in the system. And Jody does a great job, and he did a great job during this crisis. So they're representing the delivery side. On the production side, we've got Kevin Cowan, formerly known as Chief. And he is our water maintenance planner, and he really was instrumental in the things we had to do. He and Ron Marchand, who's our water operations supervisor, keeping Plant A in service, making sure Cabin Plant was running at full capacity. We had to do some manipulation to keep Plant A in service and run some temporary hoses and figure some things out. And these guys all did a great job, and we had a lot of other folks out there. But we just want to bring these guys in to kind of represent all the guys and ladies that they work with. The lab folks did a great job. So I want to recognize them as representing their group. So I'll go through this. Now I've got 4 experts back there. When I say something wrong, you can feel free to correct me, because that last week for me was a bit of a blur, but I'll try to kind of go through it. So what we had is on the morning of July 9th, right out here, this is the middle school. This is Plant A, old power plant, East 4th Street. Right out here beside East 4th Street, early that morning, we had a major leak, and we flooded 4th Street. And as we got into it, what we discovered is there's a 20-inch main that comes from the old original plant, 1904 vintage, that had failed. There's also a 24-inch main that comes from the Cabin Plant that ends right here, has a cap on it, and when that 20-inch main failed, it undermined the thrust block that's helping hold that cap on. That cap blew off, so now we had a 20 and 24-inch main leaking profusely into that hole. So that was what happened on 7/9. We'll talk about that. While we got the picture up here, on Thursday, the 12th, a week ago today, we had another leak, not a big leak, but another leak, water bubbling up out of the ground right here in front of the old power plant. When we got into that, we discovered there are 2 mains. There's the main that comes out of the plant, the high surface pumps 1, 2, and 3 are right in here. So that's the discharge for those 3 pumps, 3 of the 4 pumps. It's 20 inch. It was put in 1939, and it comes out, goes over and ties into the 1904 main. So that, we thought that might be leaking. What we found out is there's a 24-inch line in here that had been capped off, that it actually was a discharge from an older diesel pump that's no longer there. That was what was leaking, but it's tied into all this piping. So we spent a lot of time excavating that and fixing that as we went through, still dealing with finishing up on this one.
Kevin, can you point out where the clear well is and that big tank that's
Yeah,
on the ground?
this one was interesting dig because right here, there's a million gallons, right, clear well and underground. So when we excavated, and Ted was there to help us with this, we had to make sure that we didn't do anything to compromise the building over here and the wall of the clear well, because it relies on the ground pressure to keep that from blowing out. Right here is where we had the leak on November 30th of 2017. Again, all this piping is connected, so basically on the same loop of piping. And then right over here, the edge of this little building is where the 94 leak was. So these major leaks have all been in this vicinity in the old water plant in front of the power plant. This shows a little bit just of some of the lines we're talking about. You can see this is in this hole here, the first hole. We ended up putting a new 20-inch valve in, and we replaced a section of pipe back to the, as you recall, we put some valve in 2013 to prevent the system draining back on us like it did in 94. We know we had a leak that developed in 2013 downstream of that valve. So when we had this opportunity, we replaced all that piping, about 60 feet or so of new 20-inch pipe we put in there to take that out of the system. This is the 24-inch main back here. You can see there's, with that 24-inch to 20, there's a lot of things we had to be careful of when they were excavating here. And then this 20-inch goes across, zigzags across 4th Street. There's an old valve on the other side of 4th, 1939 vintage that is inoperable, and we did install a new 20-inch valve up here. When we originally did this, we knew we were about to put a new valve in on this line, and we were thinking, well, we'll put it in right here, we've got the hole open. And this is where Frankie's looking at the GIS and the charts and the maps and says, well, if we put it up here, there's only 1 or 2 takeoffs in this 20-inch line, and this is all 1904 pipe. When we abandon Plant A and get Cadman fully operational with the expansion, we can close this valve, and then now we've got just that much more of that old pipe that's out of the system. So that was a fantastic idea, and we did install that valve up there in probably record time. So I'll show you some pictures as we go. So that's the chart. Now we'll get some pictures. So we did have Adam Paris come out with his drone on Monday morning, and you can see right in here is where the leak originated. We had to get rid of some trees. See that process starting. See the water running down 4th Street. We had a lineman had to come out. We had a pole that was in the way, abandoned. And you can see as we start excavating that first hole, just how big of an excavation it was, and you can see why we had 4th Street closed. We had a lot of work going on right there by the plant. As we started getting into it, here's that big plug that got pushed out. I think you can see it on the ground right here. The 24-inch pushed out of the way. You can see as they start getting into it, one of the things is, these guys do this every day, and I don't see how they do it. You don't know what you've got till you start digging in the hole, and the hole's usually full of water. We have a lot of pumps because these valves, we never were able to fully isolate to stop the leaks. We always had water running through. And again, these guys do a great job working those conditions. So we had to dewater this hole. This is old a valve vault that's probably 1904 or thereabouts vintage. You can see it's made out of brick. They don't make them that way anymore. Turns out that was in our way, had to come out as well. There's a little bit of close-up of it. Another, as we get the hole more excavated, you can start seeing it taking shape. Let's see. Trying to see. This is the, where's the 24-inch line? I'm disoriented now. Right here?
You had your hand on it.
Right here?
Right there.
And here's the 20 and the valve that we end up having to take out. to make the repair. This shows some guys closing one of the isolation valves. Safety was on the job the whole time. This is Josh Kane, delivery safety. He was out there, they were having to do a confined space entry to get in that valve vault they're staying on top of. See the guy going in. We had a lot of customer interest, as you can imagine. I don't blame them, I'd be interested too. These are plant manager and folks from MISCAN coming down to see what was going on. We were trying to explain to them what was happening. And this is when we got into the hole. This is on the 20-inch, 24-inch, cutting it back so we can put a new cap on it. And you can see Frankie down the hole. Most of the time you see Frankie, he's going to have a saw in his hand or some tool in his hand. And you can see we had to do a lot of pumping to keep this hole dewatered. And we move forward. Here's the 20-inch cut back and the 24-inch cut back and cap. There's the leaking culprit. The actual breach wasn't quite that big. As we were excavating around it, we knocked some more chunks out of it, but it was a big hole. And you can see the conditions these guys are working in. This is Tuesday morning. We had the new valve on the 20-inch that goes this way. We capped the 24-inch, poured the concrete. That happened at probably about 5 o'clock Tuesday morning. We need to let that sit for 6 hours. Once we had this cap and this valve on, then we could start Plan A back up. So we were waiting for that concrete to set to start Plan A. And then you can see we need a T here to tee back into this, connect these, and then this is that pipe that we eventually replaced going back to that 2013 valve. So this is as progress moves forward. This is the 2013 valve that excavated back to. And also I failed to mention, Ernie Davis responded fairly quickly for us, and they were a big help. You know, they have equipment larger than what we normally need. So they were with us all the way, assisting Jody's folks, and they installed this pipe back to that valve, and this T right here that's going to go in right here. You can see them working on that T, getting it installed. We kept a close eye on them and made sure, you know, that they did it to our specifications. And there's what it looked like when it was all piped back up. So this is the valve up on East Highland. We did this we estimated that was going to take about 8 hours total from the time we isolated the system. Takes a while to close the valve. Several valves had to be operated, do the work, put the new valve in, and then open the valves back up. And when we did that, all that area around East Highland up over the hill was out of water. And of course, delivery crew said they can do it in 3 hours. We added a couple hours to that, and they did it an hour and a half. So it was a great job. And then there's a new valve we put in up on East Highland.
Where did you get all the parts? Were they available, readily available? I mean, that just doesn't look like something you'd have sitting on your shelf.
They are not. Jody was on his cell phone a lot. We've got a lot of contacts with other utilities. Where did we get the 220 inches from?
They came from Lexington. We have a guy, he used to work with us temporary for about a year, and he's now supervisor in Lexington at the water department, and I called him, asked him, I said, Steve, can you do us a favor and check, see if you have any 20-inch valves? Which that's extremely hard to find anywhere, even on a dealer's lot. And he went back, checked, he said, I've got 3 of them if you need them. I said, well, right now, we're gonna need 2 of them. So he helped us out with valves and some other miscellaneous fittings, and he offered any services that they could get assistance on.
And we got some pipe came from Indianapolis from a dealer.
At a dealer in Indianapolis, some came from Evansville.
So, Jody was on the phone at the very beginning, lining up, anything we could think of we might need, elbows and fittings, we have them coming on the way. Because those valves are what, about $20,000 a piece? You wouldn't stock those. So we move over to our secondary leak in front of the old power plant. You can see beginning of excavation. You're hoping for a small hole and you end up with a big hole. This is a concrete electrical duct bank that goes through and feeds into the pump room. They supported that with that beam there, and the leak turns out was just below this in this area, kind of a tight place. You can see soil there is not very stable, so we had to working with Ted and Ernie Davis to put piling in to provide some stability. Also to, I don't have a good picture of it, on the other side to make sure we provide stability to the clear well wall. And you can see it's a tight fit. We got the trench box down there. They cut that 24 out and capped it and poured concrete back in to make sure that that doesn't move anymore. Complicating factor here is that 20-inch line that is a discharge from these three pumps comes out and turns that way right beside it. So we had to make sure we protected that as well. So anyway, when you, a lot of, and this is just a high level, these guys, it seemed like every hour something else would come up, you know, something wouldn't fit because the pipe wasn't quite round, and they just came up with ways to make things work. And there, as you can see, how that hole goes all the way up to the foundation, the basement of the old power plant. Just a big excavation. And this is as we're finishing up, backfilling the original hole. And there's kind of what it looked like. I think this was Monday morning. You know, it's understandable that customers are not happy when this happens. I don't blame them. But we did have a lot of positive feedback. We've got some examples here from school superintendent, John Conti Coffee, KWC, Independence Bank brought out some more of the crews. Just we got a lot of community support that really offsets the negative. And again, we understand when people are out of water, we understand that. This little guy right here, when the crews were working up on East Highland, he saw that and he grabbed his hard hat, his backhoe, and wanted to walk down there and watch. So if he watched Frankie Gillum, he'll learn a good work ethic. So that's kind of what I wanted to just give you a quick overview. Again, you would be amazed. Well, you shouldn't be amazed, but you should be proud of the work that our guys and gals did on this responding to this, and I'm very proud of it. So, you guys want to say anything?
I'd like to thank one of our commission members, Ted, for being there and being so involved with all that. I think the rest of us, we did him a favor of staying away.
You couldn't have kept him away.
Ted was very helpful. We, you know, on those making those concrete pours and helping, stabilize those walls, and we do appreciate that. And we only had to pay him $1 the whole month.
He even sent us some pictures as it went along, and he said couldn't have overtime.
Yeah, we're not authorized to pay overtime.
Salary employees.
Anything else on that? We'll move
One
on.
thing I want to say about that, since I was there, and I talked to Tim, I talked to you, that the design of the new plant, it's been a lot of work, thought has been in consideration in the valving and where the piping's gonna work. If something happens at the new plant, we ain't gotta worry about this kind of thing. As best as we can tell, as far as we can go with construction of the new plant. Of course, we can't do anything about what's existing, but, that's, Tim's assured me and Kevin's assured me that the new plan's gonna take all that into consideration, so we can make repairs without losing service to the customers.
I guess an obvious question is, we started the new plan 1.5 years ago. We would
Probably
all,
not be doing that.
could this have happened?
If the new plant was in service, we wouldn't have had to worry about this particular one.
Was this related in any way to all these sinkholes? There was an article in the paper about 18 or 20 sinkholes occurring around Davis County because of all the rain and all of that. Was that leak related to any of that?
Well, that could be leak related to stormwater lines, it could be related to sanitary sewer lines, as well as water lines. Of course, the county, that's in our water districts. It's not OMU's responsibility to maintain that. But generally, when you get massive amounts of rain like we had early in the summer, those big floods, it tends to disrupt the stormwater systems and the stormwater and the sanitary sewer system. You get open in the pipe, it takes on soil and creates the sinkholes. That's usually what I've found is causes that kind of thing.
When the sinkhole occurred around where this leak
No.
occurred, and that caused a stress on the pipe and made it break or anything?
I would think a lot of stress in the pipe was due to the very, very wet weather and the very, very dry weather we've had for about 3 weeks. So, but once that pipe started leaking, that thrust block weighed about 40,000 pounds. Once you undermined its support, it was actually pulling on the pipe.
But we have, not that's necessarily related to these leaks, but we have seen continued movement in our settlement monitoring of the planning filter building, which we've been watching now for about 5 years. And, that building moves with the seasons, it's kind of seasonal. But the general trend is, especially on the southwest corner, the corner closest to the street on the middle school side, it's beginning to accelerate a little bit. So now is the time to get out of that facility as soon as we can.
A year ago was the time.
Well, we've been best, the sooner the better. Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
Thank y'all. Nice to meet y'all.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm glad he didn't. On the agenda you got originally, we did pull one of the discussion items off we could talk about. We're going to bring it back to you later on the benefits delegation. Other than that, do you guys have any agenda changes or modifications?
Okay, on the reserve policy tables update, there's no change in the policy this year. Last year we changed it because we changed, we sprung from the 1985 electric rate ordinance to the 2002, which had some wording changes. So I was able to fix all that last year. We'll probably update it again when Elm Smith closes down and the wholesale category stuff and all that decreases. So no changes this year on the policy. So updated the tables. If you'll bring up that other file, Brittany. Yes, no, yeah, that one. You can see the historical days cash on hand. I've got a water chart, electric chart, and basically it just shows you the historical data. And then on the tables down below that with all the cash funds down the next page. This shows you what our actual cash balances were at the end of May of 2018, and then we've got the budget. So you can see what we're actually calculating here is do we have the required minimums and what's our target for cash for in each of the categories, you know, construction funds, the debt service funds, and the operation and contingency funds. So on the next page, when you come down, right there, that's where we set our cash days on hand by policy. It's not in the actual document policy, it's in this table. So we decide what we want our cash to be minimum and then our target. So electric has been 150 minimum on a cash of operating days cash on hand, and the target 200 for the last several years, 2 or 3 years. So we've not changed anything there. We're good on all of our balances. So the next table, Brittany, this is the water fund. It's got the $48.6 million in bond funds on there to cover the construction over the next 3 years. I've got that plugged in there. And then at the bottom, we've changed the minimum to 125 days. Any higher than that on the minimum, the rate increase would have to be larger. So we've got that forecasted out to be about 32% for the rate increase that we're going to do with the bonds. The two-step increase over the next 2 years for the water, if the city authorizes the bonds, the rate increase. So that's the only change, was to change that to 125. Now, your question probably is, how does that look to Moody's that's going to be rating us on these bonds? They've got a rating category on days cash on hand, and anywhere from 150 to 35 days of cash operating is a single A rating. So that's what we are. Back in 2011, we were at 101 days, so we'll be fine on that. But I wanted to leave the target at 200 because this will be probably our lowest year. We'll build from here. So
on the depreciation fund for electrical system,
yes.
what percent of that fund is targeted for Elm Smith?
We don't really. It's actually none of that's targeted for Emerson.
No
It's 4% of the net book value for distribution. That's all the routine funds for
So
distribution.
there's no depreciation fund for Elmer Smith.
Well, we had one, it was in the 85 bond ordinance at 200,000, because most of Elmer Smith stuff's bonded. So this is just routine from rates, cash set aside for maintenance items. So, as our book value goes up or down, that 4% times that amount, you know, it can go up or down. Now with water, adding this $48 million plan, it's gonna go from 1 million to 2 million over the next several years, so maybe that'll push off the next, you know, if we have enough cash in our routine maintenance fund, we don't have to bond.
So there really weren't any areas where we violated the policy?
Oh, no, no, no.
We're in good shape on.
No, we monitor it every month. And then the other spreadsheet, Brittany, that had the date on there, that was a file we added last year, right there, that shows you all the cash accounts. And then at the bottom, you can see how much is left over that we've got as contingency, that can be used for ECA, rate stabilization, whatever. It's like, we're down to 22.5 million. And I even added the line for the rate stabilization that we budgeted for next year, for 18, was 3.6 million, so you can see, setting that aside, that we know we might have to use that, you know, and that was in 18, this is based on 18 looking at it. So at the beginning of 19, we've got 22.5 million for catastrophes.
Good, thank you.
Okay?
Move for approval.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
And the next one is a resolution, as Rob was the alternate director for OMU to KYMEA, and we need a resolution from our utility commission for under their bylaws designating David Plank, as he's taken Rob's place, to be the alternate representative and director on the KYMEA board of directors. So that's what this one is.
So moved. Second. Dave's not here.
He's on vacation. Smart man.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
I'm sorry, I didn't get a second.
I think having them up, I think that'll ensure the KYMA will be a rounding success, you know, now that we've got those two guys.
Buckets of blood.
Buckets of blood, you got it. The next one is a recommendation, and Michael, you want me to do it, or you want to take this one?
Doesn't matter.
Well, I'll take it, and you can jump in if you want to. So, our current vacation policy allows employees to carry over up to 40 hours or 1 week of vacation annually. We have been looking at that, and one of the things that we've seen, and it's really come to ahead with a lot of the overtime we're working, and a lot of the in power production with us working shorthanded and folks not being able to take their vacation, or when they take vacation, especially in Brad's operations group, will come with overtime or get a lot of overtime for those folks. And they pointed that out to us and said, you know, if we could carry over more vacation, it would help us out. And I think it works, in this case, it helps management out as well. So our policy doesn't have any flexibility to go beyond that. So what we're recommending here is that we modify our current vacation policy to allow, with the recommendation by the department head, the director, and review by HR, and then approval by the general manager, and an employee to carry over up to an additional 80 hours or additional 2 weeks over the 40 that they're able to carry over now. The 40 is at their choice now. This would be only if they make they ask for it, it's approved by the department head and by the general manager. That would take the total amount to be carried over up to 120 hours or 3 weeks.
So it's not policy, it has to be approved by the department head.
It has to be approved, yeah, it's not automatic, it has to be approved, it has to be, the way we've got it written, it has to be justified in a memo by the department head and approved, reviewed by HR, approved by the general manager.
That's a lifetime accrual of 80 hours, is that correct?
Yeah, you can only, you get, it's every year, so it's 120 is the most you could ever have in your bank.
Would we be thinking about changing this back after Elmer Smith is closed?
You know, I think there are cases where I think it's good to have this flexibility, you know, in Tim's group, if they have a big storm or something toward the end of a calendar year and some folks that had vacation plan can't take it, right now, it's use it or lose it. So if the general manager with the department head could approve that, I think there may be some times, I don't think you'll see this used a lot, but I think there are some times when this flexibility would be helpful to have for both the employees and for us.
You know, I understand the predicament this causes for you, but at the same time, you know, it's really important that employees do take vacation, and we should encourage them to take vacation. I would feel more comfortable if we just went from 40 to 80, and if that doesn't work for you, you see in another year that's not working, then we add again, but I'd be more comfortable with a total of 80, not 120.
You know, I think 120 is reasonable. We've looked at it. We've looked at some of the folks at the power plant, and that, you know, I think that's, some of them will need to carry over that amount. You know, as employees go through our system, they get up, our most senior employees have a fair amount of vacation every year. I don't think it's unreasonable for the 120. I don't think we'll be seeing a lot of that outside the power plant at all. But it gives us, you know, I think we should just go ahead and stick with the 120. I don't see the going stepwise is necessary. But
Does this give some employees that are in certain jobs an advantage over other employees? You know, we probably never face this, you know, so they accumulate so much extra, unused vacation time, where other people said, I'd like to, but I just can't do it because I don't have that kind of work that I'm required to.
Kind of depends on how you look at it. I'm
Yeah.
not sure it's an advantage to carry over vacation, depending on the situation, because basically a lot of what we're talking about is they weren't able to take the time off due to having to work, so I don't consider that an advantage. But yes, I can see where it has to be looked at on a case-by-case basis, and when you're doing that, it's subjective. So somebody could look at it that way, but I'm not so sure that it will be.
But you know, a lot of companies don't allow people when they leave to get paid for unused vacation. You use it or you lose it. You lose it all. There's not even 40 hours.
Oh, you mean year to year? You
Yeah.
are correct.
What is the vacation schedule now? How many years for how many weeks? Hours.
I used to have that printed out. You haven't? Depends on, we get 2 weeks when you start at the 7, I think it's around the 7-year mark, you start to get that third, but we've got it here potentially.
when you get up to 25 years, you have 5 weeks. That's the original. And I think generally, to Tony's original first point, most employees want to take their vacation. They don't want to carry it
Maybe we
over.
should encourage it.
And we do encourage it. I know an employee that's near and dear to my heart, that's not going to be able to take all his vacation this year, just because of work requirements, and that's me. I'm not going to be able to take 5 weeks. So, you know, I think this is reasonable. You know, you will get a report on how many times we've done this and a list, and if you think it's being excessively used, we can come back. You always have the opportunity to come back and reel it back in.
Well, I think that's important that we do get a report, because that's not in the policy change. It doesn't say anything about us getting a report. And I think
We
that
certainly
would be-
add
would be
language that
important.
will provide an exception reporting on that.
And we could do that in the January, February timeframe, after we've granted, and you
Just
can see
under
that.
informational items, you know, on the
We-
agenda or
I think that's
something.
perfect.
That's
Just
a
like
good
you do with the over market value.
Not that we have to approve it, but just so that,
And you can monitor and say, hey, you know, it's only happening 1 or 2 employees, or, you know, if you think it's getting excessive, certainly we can go back and change it. I don't see that, you know, other than employees at the power plant, I don't see that it's gonna be, this is not something we're gonna do a lot, but it will give us the ability to do it, you know, if it's justified.
I'll make a motion with Tom's changing in the wording of the policy to include a yearly report.
Exceptional point you got.
second.
Discussion? All those in favor say yes?
Yes. Yes.
All those opposed? No.
Thank you. Next is the consent agenda. Fairly routine. One thing I do want to point out, there's a bid recommendation down here for high service pump number 4 backup. This is part of our Plan A contingency planning. When we got into the situation where we had to isolate the 3 pumps for that leak up by the building, high service pump 4 was keeping Plan A in service. We don't have at that point, we don't have the backup. We've had our contingency plan to add a backup for high service pump number 4, and this is that pump. We've also designed it so that when we move to cabin plant, this pump will move with us. So this pump will not be stranded at Plan A. It will be taken to cabin and put in service there. So this is a good piece of our contingency planning.
I'd like to move for approval of the consent agenda, except I just want some clarification on one item on there under C29. Under Oppenheim Research Monthly Satisfaction Survey, wonder why we're surveying 2010. Third line down, second paragraph.
Is that a typo? That's a typo.
Yeah, that's a type of fiscal year.
3 people missed it, I just thought maybe the 4th one might be.
Well, every once in a while we leave one for you. Every once in a while we leave one for y'all to catch.
Yeah, that's
Just to make sure you're on your toes. So
If that got through that, I was picking that up.
you get extra lunch next month.
I was gonna say, you win.
You win.
He gets time and a half.
You doing something while I could drink water. So that's 2010, right? 2020 rather, 2020, is that?
Yeah.
Huh? Should be
2019.
2019,
Fiscal year
okay.
2019.
Okay, just want to make sure that that's what we approved.
My apologies.
No
Glad you caught it though.
So my recommendation, that we approve these stands with that.
We have a second. Second. All those in favor say aye.
We have, on the reports, we have a detailed fiscal year-end financial update that you guys have. Lynn can go over the highlights, or we can have Laura go through it in depth. It's your call.
That was an outstanding, presentation.
Do you need us to go over it, or?
Were there any highlights that you'd like to mention that?
Generation sales all were down below budget. I can go over the specifics on the percent increases and stuff, but we were just below budget on everything, and then our net income was above budget, so, if you want more detail than that, I've got it here.
We can just, take your questions, or we can kind of, Laura she loves 20-minute presentations. But, if you guys are comfortable with it, we can.
You want a 10-minute or a 20-minute?
How about Laura give us an executive summary?
We can do that.
I can do an executive. If you don't mind, I can skim through the slides real quick, if that's okay?
Wherever you're comfortable.
Sure. I'll make this quick. I'll just skip right to the consolidated electric system. Our revenue was up 2.2%. As you can see, it was mostly due to the increase in our retail sales. Our wholesale sales were down. Operating expenses were below budget, above last year, 6.1% below budget. That's primarily due to decreases in our power production costs.
On that, why our retail sales have gone up so much in the last few years, are there any big users, or any commercial users, or is that just
I have a
more
slide
people,
here.
more houses, more people? Why are we using more electricity?
It's mostly on our commercial, and I think that we have a slide in here on our retail. Our residential is down, I believe.
Yeah, the sales actually are flat to down, the revenue's up
Yes.
Rate increase.
because of the EC rate.
Is Owensboro Crane self-generation going to take care of all the new plant too?
We don't know.
So I'll go back to our consolidated electric system.
So it's just the revenues up the actual
The rate increase.
Yeah, our actual
increase and things.
megawatt hour sales decline a little
Okay.
bit, but they're mostly flat.
Okay, thank you.
I told you got screwed up and tried to reinstall it.
So our net income pretty flat to last year, above budget for the consolidated electric system. This slide shows our dividends, pretty flat on our cash. That does include the 2.5% increase, slight decrease in our pilot. And our cash and investment balances show that we're up higher than budget for operating and capital improvement funds, and pretty consistent with our bond restricted funds. This slide just basically shows that we were below budget on our capital expenditures for this year. That's it for the next slide. Just shows some of our financial ratios here. I can skip on to the water system unless you all have some specific questions. Okay. On our water system, our sales were up 1.6%, over budget, higher than last year as well. And our revenues were below. Was below budget. We did have an increase due to the anticipated bond issuance that didn't actually occur this year. So, and our expenses were 1.9% below budget. This slide shows, similar to our electric side, shows our expenses per 1,000 gallons below budget as well. Net income was above budget, and that, again, primarily due to lower expenses.
Was that November last year break in cost in this as far as impacting it? The one we just had is gonna be in this year's.
Right. So the one we just had, we've got contingency funds for that. That plan is contingency, so we're covering most of that out of the bond funds, the piping and valves we bought.
Cash and investment balances, again, we were below budget on our capital improvements. We did not issue the bonds. And the same thing with our capital expenditures. That's pretty much it. Shows our G&A expenses were below budget by 15%.
What do you think that was? Less employees? Primarily?
Outside services and wholesale.
That's a pretty good decrease.
Outside services and wholesale too, was a
Advertising.
lot less than what we expected.
We had a lot of, I haven't looked up correctly, we had a lot of budget for outside services for contract review and legal services and wholesale that we came in under budget on with all the work we did to get, we thought we would have more of that in the power supply process that we just wrapped up. We were under on that.
Yes. And then there's our summary. Electric system, $5.6 million above budget, and the water system is $649,000 above budget.
This was comparing, looking at budget versus our actuals. What I put together was looking at 17-year versus 18-year to see, what really happened. Budget's important, but, how did we compare to last year? And so, yes, and so, actually, the years were very similar. Our operating revenue was only up 1.9%. Our operating expense, consolidated electric, is up 4%. But our net income, before transfers, we were actually down 0.5%. And then the change in net position, which adds to our equity, or our construction funds and routine maintenance funds, is we were down 2% from 17. So on the electric general fund cash, we are actually decreased $453,000. So it looks like we did great to budget, but when you look at year to year, we're actually a little bit less than we were the year before. And then on the water side, revenues were up 0.5% versus 17. The expenses were up 0.5% also, but the net income, we were up 272%. And then I'm sorry, I said that backwards. We were down from the prior year. I've got my columns. I switched my columns. We had a loss of $241,000 in 18. In 17, we had a loss of $355,000 after the transfer. So the actual water water general fund cash increased $105,000. So that's important to look at those, year to year also.
we had to consider all economic things, maybe.
General manager report, a couple things. June was about 1.9 degrees above average. And continued the trend. April or May was quite a bit above normal. And we've got some statistics here Lynn passed along to me. We had the highest retail sales for a month of June in the last 5 years. On wholesale sales, the month of June, and this is megawatt hours, was the third highest in the last, well, the third highest ever, right?
In the last 5 years.
In the last 5 years. And on the water side, the second highest water sales for June. So June was a pretty good month. On the production side, for electric production, the units ran well. Unit 1 only had 14 and a half hours on outage for the month. Unit 2 didn't have any outages during June, so units ran well for June. And then lastly, you know, the EIA came out with their summer report projection, and natural gas continues to be predominant for electricity generation. It set a record 2016, or summer record. They think it might be close to that this summer. And coal-fired generation continues to decline to about 30% of total U.S. generation. And you can see, I put it here, natural gas, they reported that the 3-year average for 15 through 17 was $316 a million. If you go back to 2006 to 2008, the 3-year average was $769. So we've talked about natural gas prices declining, and that's an illustration of that.
How long was the flame down from Warrenburg?
The power plant was down. We started back up. We were back on early Wednesday morning.
Early Wednesday morning, so about 48 hours.
July will shape up to be a really good month too. That's going to cut that down.
That's going to hurt us because we had to take both units off when we ran out of water. And now we're getting some cooler weather in July, so prices are softening up a little bit. But hopefully we'll get some more heat back in here. Hey, you know, it's nice to sit out in the yard, but it's not good for sale. All right, monthlies.
Okay, the financials. For the month of June, consolidated net income was at 59.5%, better than budget. On the retail system, without the ECA adjustment, we're at 57% better than budget. June was a great month. Wholesale were down 7.3% below budget. And then on the telecommunications, we're better than budget by $37,000, and water we're up $152,000. Mainly our G&A costs are down 61% for retail and 40% for wholesale, and then our advertising costs for telecom. And then on the water side, the residential revenue is down 1.9% for June, but commercial was up, and the city usage was down. And so their transmission and distribution costs were down 20%, and the G&A was down 49%. The table at the bottom there, after 1 month of actuals and the rest of the months of budget, we project consolidated net income to be about 7.7% better than budget. And the retail side without the ECA adjustment, about 7.4% better than budget. 0.6% for wholesale better than budget, and then telecommunications positive $37,000, and water $152,000 net income. With June starting off with a bang, that's really helped us a lot. So we'll see how it goes. Any questions?
Good month.
Think we have anything for action at future meeting, governance items? I believe everyone reviewed those in their area, and there were no issues with those. Next thing, upcoming